He told me all his exes were crazy and that I was the first normal girl he'd ever dated. A year later, I was sitting in a police station being questioned about loans I never took, listening to my own voice on recordings I never agreed to, and realizing my boyfriend had spent months forging my signature and building debt in my name. By the end of the story, the scammer doesn't just lose me, he loses his freedom, his reputation, and every piece of control he thought he had over my life. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. My name is Harper. I'm 26. I work as a junior analyst for a small firm, and I used to believe I was too smart to get scammed by a man I loved. That illusion died in a noisy bar on a Thursday night. It was one of those after-work places. Sticky tables, decent fries, and way too many people in shirts with their ID badges still clipped to their belts. My coworker Danny and I were sitting at the bar, sharing nachos and complaining about clients who ask for just a tiny change at 4:55 p.m. I was halfway through my second drink when he walked in. Jace. Tall, messy brown hair, a beard that looked like it required effort to keep looking that casual. He had the kind of smile that made the bartender laugh back before he even said anything. He slapped a guy on the shoulder, nodded at someone across the room. He walked like every place belonged to him a little bit. He noticed my empty glass before I did. You look like someone who just mentally rewrote 3 emails, he said, leaning slightly toward me. Want a refill? I laughed because he wasn't wrong. He ordered me another drink, introduced himself, included Danny in the conversation like he wasn't just there to flirt. Within 10 minutes, I knew he worked in fintech, had a couple of projects running, and thought corporate banks were dinosaurs waiting to be disrupted. I didn't fully understand what he did, but he talked about money and apps and investors with so much confidence that my brain filled in the gaps for him. Debt buddies, he said when I mentioned my student loans, clinking his glass against mine. In 5 years we'll be rich, and this will all be a funny story. When we left the bar that night, he walked us to Danny's car. The street was damp, the air smelled like rain and fried food. Just before we said goodbye, he dropped what should have been the biggest red flag of my dating life. I'll be straight with you, he said. I've had some crazy exes. Like, full drama, throwing things, stalking my Instagram exes. It's nice to meet someone who seems normal. I laughed. Well, I'm incredibly boring, so you're safe. Danny gave me a look over his shoulder like, did you hear that? But I shrugged it off. Everyone complains about their exes. And honestly, it felt a little flattering. I wasn't like those other girls. I was the sane one. Somewhere deep in my brain, a very small voice said, if every woman he's dated is a problem, maybe he's the common denominator. I stuffed that voice into a box, taped it shut, and threw it down the stairs. Within a week, we were texting every day. Within a month, he was cooking me pasta in his tiny kitchen while some indie playlist hummed in the background. Within 3 months, he had met my mom over brunch and charmed her so thoroughly that she asked me later, where did you find this one? He seems solid. He's good with money, I said, watching him from across the restaurant as he argued with the waiter about being undercharged. He's in finance. Those words would come back to haunt me. The slide from we're dating to we live together happened so gradually that I can't mark a clean start date. It began with a hoodie left on the back of my chair. Then a toothbrush in my bathroom. Then my roommate has his girlfriend over all the time. I barely sleep in my own bed anyway. Can I just crash here for a few days? I liked having him around. He made coffee in the morning, sent me memes during the day, curled around me at night like I was something worth protecting. Having his shoes by my door made the apartment feel less temporary, less like a fresh out of college rental and more like an actual home. The few days turned into weeks, then months. Should I start paying rent? He asked one night, spooning pasta onto my plate. I shrugged, trying to sound casual. If you want. Whatever you can manage. I know your startup stuff is volatile. He winced in a way that almost looked sincere. I'll cover groceries, utilities, all that. Right now cash flow is a little weird. Once we close this round, you'll be sick of how much I insist on paying. That was the first time he said close this round. It would not be the last. He did pick up groceries sometimes. He Venmo'd me little amounts with notes like for Wi-Fi and pizza tax. I let myself believe that was enough. I liked thinking of us as a team. His wild, entrepreneurial brain. My steady paycheck and spreadsheet skills. The first time I saw a crack was over something small. His phone buzzed on the coffee table one afternoon while he was in the shower. A notification flashed, payment overdue, final notice. The sender was a bank I didn't recognize. When he came out, towel around his waist, I nodded toward the phone. Everything okay? He glanced at the screen, then rolled his eyes and hit dismiss. Yeah, just an old card I forgot to close. Their system is messed up. I'll take care of it. His tone said, don't worry about it, so I didn't. Or I told myself I didn't. Money was always a little fuzzy with him. He talked big about investments and equity and future upside, but when it came to actual cash, he always seemed just shy of being comfortable. There was always some client who hadn't paid yet, some investor who promised to wire next week. Meanwhile, my rent was always on time. The night everything quietly shifted, I woke up at 2:37 a.m. to the sound of typing. The room was dark except for a faint blue glow bleeding under the bedroom door. My heart kicked once, hard. I slid out of bed and padded into the living room. Jace was at the dining table, hunched over my old laptop. The one I used all through college and kept around as a backup. The screen was turned away from me. In the glow, I could make out blocks of text, numbers, the layout of a banking site. Hey, I said, voice thick with sleep. What are you doing? He jumped, then relaxed when he saw it was just me. Shit, sorry, did I wake you? He asked, rubbing the back of his neck. Couldn't sleep. I was looking at your loan terms. My what? Your student loan. He turned the screen a tiny bit, just enough to show me a header, loan summary, federal. Then he shifted it back. You told me last week the interest rate, and it's brutal. I've been thinking. I know some refinance options that might help. The idea of someone voluntarily opening my loan portal at 2 a.m. should have creeped me out. Instead, the tired, scared part of me that watched a big chunk of every paycheck disappear each month felt grateful. How? I asked. I tried to look once. It was all jargon. He smiled, that confidence back in place. Let me work something up, he said. I'll run the numbers, see what you qualify for. I do this stuff all the time. You can tell me no if you don't like it. I want to help. I hugged him from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder. You're sweet, I said. Inside, that small boxed-up voice rattled against the tape. Why is he doing this without you? Why at 2:37 a.m.? Why on your computer, not his? I told the voice to shut up. A man wanting to help me with debt wasn't a crime. Not yet. A couple of weeks later, he came home holding a folder. I think I found something, he said, dropping it on the table. It's a consolidation program. Lower interest, 1 payment instead of 3. Way less stress. He opened the folder, pulled out 3 sheets of paper with a bank logo at the top. The forms were mostly filled in already. My name, my address, my loan balances, my employer. Even my salary was accurate. I used your latest pay stub, he explained when he saw my eyebrows lift. You left it on the counter last week. I promise I'm not creeping through your drawers. He laughed. I laughed with him, even though that was exactly what he'd done. Here's the gist, he said, tapping the paper. They pay off your old loans. You owe them instead, but at a lower rate. Saves you thousands over the life of the loan. I skimmed. It looked like every loan document I'd ever seen, dense, boring, full of words that might as well have been in Greek. Refinance. Consolidation. APR. What do I have to do? I asked. Sign here, here, and here, he said, pointing to 3 lines. I'll submit it online. They'll contact you if they need anything else. I should have said, let me read this alone. I should have asked for time to research. Instead, I thought about the number I sent to my loan servicer every month, grabbed a pen, and signed where he pointed. He kissed the top of my head afterward. You just made future you very happy, he said. Future me would strongly disagree. A month later, I got a letter from my old loan servicer saying my balance was paid in full. I celebrated with takeout and a bottle of mediocre wine. Jace toasted to smart moves and promised I'd thank him when we're 35 and not drowning. I never got a new welcome packet from the bank that supposedly refinanced my loans. I noticed, thought it was weird, told myself mail gets lost all the time, and moved on. That was my thing in this relationship. Noticing, thinking briefly, moving on. Until the day my phone rang at work and a stranger said my full name with the kind of tone people reserve for serious news. Ms. Harper Lewis? Yes. This is Daniel from Northway Bank. I'm calling about your recent application for a personal loan. I blinked at my spreadsheet. My what? We received an online application in your name last week, he said, for a $30,000 unsecured loan. I just need to confirm a few details before we move to the next step. My throat went dry. There's been a mistake, I said. I didn't apply for any loan. He hesitated. I could hear him clicking. The application has your social security number, your current address, your employer, and a copy of your driver's license on file, he said slowly. You're saying that isn't you? I'm saying I absolutely did not apply, I said, my voice a little louder than office appropriate. He cleared his throat. Okay. In that case, this may be identity theft. I'll flag the application and we'll email you the documents so you can review the signature. You should also file a fraud report. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there staring at my computer screen while my heart tried to punch its way out of my chest. Identity theft happened to other people. To careless people who gave their password to scam emails or clicked weird links. Not to me. I used password managers and two-factor. I shredded mail. I did my taxes early. I texted Jace, some bank just called about a loan I never applied for? He answered immediately. Scammers, he replied. Happening to everyone right now. Call them back and tell them it wasn't you. I'll help you write a fraud letter tonight. He had an answer ready before he even knew the details. That should have told me something. That night, I showed him the email with the attached PDF of the application. See, he said, scrolling. They've got your info. Probably from some site that got hacked. Not your fault. At the last page, my supposed signature sat in neat blue ink. It looked like mine. The same loop on the H, the same long tail on the L. Not a perfect copy, but close enough that a stranger would never question it. My stomach turned. Does that look like my handwriting to you? I asked. He squinted. Kind of? But it's probably a traced version. People are good at copying signatures. That's why banks don't really rely on them anymore. He said it so casually, like he gave TED Talks on forgery. Who would even have enough of my info to do this? I asked. My social, my license, my address, my salary. He shrugged. Harper, you use your info every time you open an account, rent an apartment, apply for anything. There have been a bunch of big data breaches lately. You probably got one of those emails you ignored. He pulled me into his side, kissed my temple. Don't freak out, he said. We'll file the report, lock your credit, and that's it. Good thing you're dating a finance guy. I wanted to believe him so badly that my brain bent itself into agreement. We wrote the fraud letter together. He dictated phrases like, I did not authorize, and I formally dispute the validity, while I typed. We emailed it with a copy of my ID. The bank froze the application. Life went back to normal. Except now there was a new layer under everything, a thin sheet of unease. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How often he asked me to just sign this real quick, a change of address form, a delivery slip, something for the building management. How he sometimes set his phone face down when certain numbers popped up. How his crazy exes all seemed to have stories that ended with she tried to ruin my life. One Saturday afternoon, I was cleaning the living room when I found a small black flash drive wedged between the couch cushions. It didn't look like much. No logo, just generic plastic. I plugged it into my laptop without thinking, the way you do when you find a random USB and assume it's either old photos or nothing. There was one folder on it. H. My fingers went numb. I opened it. Inside were audio files. Dozens of them. Each named with a date and a time. I clicked on one at random. My own voice filled the speakers. I don't know, I just feel like they expect me to do senior-level work for junior-level pay, I was saying, a little echo from our kitchen in the background. Like, I'm grateful I have a job, but I'm so tired, Jace. His voice answered, faint but there. You're killing it, babe. They'd be screwed without you. I clicked another file. Okay, card number is 4739. It was me, reading my debit card out loud to my mom over speakerphone because she'd forgotten hers at home and needed to book a ticket. Another file. I was dictating my social for a background check form because the website wouldn't load and he'd offered to fill it in for me later so it doesn't time out. Another file. Me, reading out the security questions I'd chosen for an online banking profile while he sat across from me at the coffee table, asking mother's maiden name, first school, favorite teacher. The recordings were clear. No muffled pockets or accidental background noise. He had set the device near us on purpose. Pressed record on purpose. He'd been collecting my life one sentence at a time. I sat there on the floor with my laptop open, listening to my own voice give away every piece of data someone would need to become me on paper. That was the moment the tape finally ripped off the box where I kept my doubt. I ejected the drive and slid it back into the couch where I'd found it. If he knew I'd seen it, he'd change tactics. And I needed him predictable long enough to figure out how bad this really was. For the first time since we started dating, I didn't run to him with my fear. I opened the Notes app on my phone instead and started a list. 2A, loan site, my laptop, said he was helping. Consolidation forms, signed without full reading. Fraudulent Northway loan app, signature looks like mine. USB with recordings of my card number, SSN, security questions, etc. I labeled the note grocery list so it wouldn't draw attention if he glanced at my screen. That night in bed, he wrapped his arm around my waist and whispered, "You're quiet. You okay?" I stared at the dark ceiling. "Just tired," I said. He kissed my shoulder. "We're going to be fine," he murmured. "I've got plans. Big ones. You'll see." I lay there and realized something that made my skin crawl. When a man tells you all his exes are crazy, maybe he's not afraid of drama. Maybe he's afraid of women who eventually figure out what he really did. And maybe, just maybe, I was next on that list. When people talk about identity theft, they usually make it sound like a glitch in the system. Some unknown hacker, some random breach, someone far away typing your data into a screen. It's a lot less abstract when the thief is brushing his teeth next to you. After the USB, I stopped sharing anything important out loud. No more reading numbers into the air. No more dictating passwords, even to my mother. If I had to enter sensitive info, I did it alone with the door locked and the TV off. I didn't confront Jace. Not yet. Confrontation is great for movies. In real life, all it does, especially with someone like him, is warn them it's time to delete things. Instead, I started quietly pulling my world back to myself. First was my email. I changed the password, added two-factor, checked the devices section. There it was, an unfamiliar login from a laptop that wasn't mine, a month ago, from our apartment's IP address. I revoked all sessions, logged out everywhere, changed the password again. Next was my banking. I requested paper statements. I opened a new checking account at a different bank on my lunch break and set my paycheck direct deposit to go there instead of the joint account we used for rent and groceries. At home, I told him work is switching payroll systems. They might mess up the timing next month. He shrugged. As long as the rent gets paid, I don't care. That was the thing about Jace. He cared deeply about money in the abstract, investments, deals, rounds, but day-to-day adult stuff bored him. Bills existed to be postponed. Contracts existed to be bent. He had no idea I was shifting the ground under his feet. A week later, a letter showed up in the mail with my name on it and a bank logo I didn't recognize. I opened it standing over the trash can. "Welcome to your Platinum FlexLine loan," the first line said. "We're excited to support your financial goals." I read it twice. There was an account number, a credit limit in the tens of thousands, and a repayment schedule. I felt like the room tilted. I hadn't applied for anything since the fraudulent Northway loan we'd already disputed. Yet here was another lender who believed I'd come to them with open arms and a pen. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. On the signature line, my name. Same forged handwriting. Same not quite mine loops. At the back, there was a co-applicant section, blank. Jace wasn't dumb enough to put his own name anywhere near these things. I called the number on the letter right away. "Hi, I think there's been a mistake," I said. "This account was opened in my name, but I didn't authorize it." The woman on the line sounded tired but kind. "Let me pull it up," she said. "Can I verify some information?" She read out my social, my mother's maiden name, my first pet's name. Security questions I'd once laughed through as Jace teased me about my childhood answers. I confirmed each one, feeling sicker with every yes. "They match what we have on file," she said. "There's also an IP address tied to the online application. It looks like it came from your home network. Could you email me copies of everything?" I asked. "I need to file a police report." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough to let me know this wasn't the first time she'd heard that sentence. "We can do that," she said. "I'm also going to flag this for our fraud team." That night, I waited until Jace was in the shower, then opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The email from the bank was there. I downloaded everything and studied it like a textbook. There, in black and white, was Harper Lewis requesting $25,000 for home improvements. Home improvements. In my rented one-bedroom with beige walls and a fridge that rattled when it ran. The application included a PDF upload of my driver's license and my last 2 pay stubs. I hadn't scanned those for anything recently. Someone else had. Someone who knew exactly where I kept the file folder labeled important stuff in the bottom drawer of my desk. I checked my credit report next. I'd never done it before. I always assumed my credit was fine because I paid my bills. As the report loaded, dread pooled in my stomach. There were 6 accounts listed under my name. 2 were legit, my old student loan, now showing as transferred, and my credit card. The other 4 were a horror film. A consolidated education loan for an amount significantly higher than my original debt. The frozen Northway application, marked under review. The brand new Platinum Flex line. And another credit line from a totally different bank, opened 2 months ago, already carrying a balance I hadn't spent. Jace hummed in the shower down the hall while I scrolled through the wreckage of my financial identity. I wanted to throw up. Or scream. Or both. Instead, I took a breath, opened my notes app, and added each new discovery to my list. Then I screenshotted everything and backed it up to a cloud folder he didn't know existed. I couldn't afford to lose proof. The next morning, I didn't say anything. Neither did he. We ate toast. He joked about a client. He kissed my cheek as I left. At lunch, I sat in my car with the windows cracked and called the non-emergency police line. "I think someone I live with has been opening loans in my name," I said, hearing how insane it sounded out loud. "And forging my signature." The dispatcher transferred me to a detective. He asked the same questions the bank lady had. Then some different ones. "Do you know this person's full name? Date of birth? Has he ever had access to your personal documents or devices? Do you have any reason to believe he'd do something like this?" Until last week I would have said no, I admitted. But I found recordings of me reading out card numbers and social security and security questions on his flash drive. That made the detective go quiet for a second. "Can you bring those recordings in?" he asked. "Yes." "Okay," he said. "We're going to open an identity theft case. It may take some time, but if what you're saying is accurate, this is serious. In the meantime, keep copies of everything. And don't confront him alone. Don't confront him alone." The words felt heavy in my chest. I hadn't intended to tell Jace anything yet. But hearing an actual officer say it out loud turned my private nightmare into something official. When I got home that night, Jace was pacing the living room, phone to his ear, voice raised. "I don't care what the letter says," he snapped. "It's a mistake. I'll call them tomorrow." He hung up hard enough that the case bounced. "What's wrong?" I asked, playing dumb. "Fucking banks," he said. "They flagged a transfer on my business account. People who don't build anything shouldn't be allowed to judge the people who do." He rubbed his forehead like he had a headache. Then he looked at me, eyes softening. "How was your day?" I thought about the detective's warning. About the USB hidden back in the couch, my name on 4 different debts, my credit report bleeding red. "Busy," I said. "Nothing interesting." That was the night I made my own plan. He thought he was the only one who knew how to game the system. The only one who could move in the shadows while everyone else looked at the surface. He liked to see himself as the main character, too clever to ever get caught, surrounded by crazy women who overreacted. I was done reacting. I was going to prepare. Step 1. Move everything important off my shared devices. Step 2. Tell my boss enough of the situation that if police showed up at the office asking questions, I wouldn't look like the villain. Step 3. Wait. Because Jace had gotten comfortable. Comfortable enough to get sloppy. And when someone builds a life on lies written in permanent ink, all you really need to destroy it is light. Justice doesn't start with handcuffs. It starts with paperwork. By the time the detective called me back in, my digital grocery list had turned into a full-blown dossier. Screenshots of my credit report. Copies of loan agreements with forged signatures. Photos of envelopes from banks I'd never contacted. A recording of Jace casually explaining that signatures don't mean much anymore. And, of course, the USB. I scheduled my doctor's appointment for a Tuesday morning and took my folder downtown. The police station smelled like coffee and old printer ink. The detective, Martinez, early 40s, tired eyes that had seen too many domestic messes, met me in a small interview room with a metal table that looked like it had never seen a happy conversation. He turned on a little recorder and slid a legal pad toward me. From the beginning, he said. Take your time. Talk like you're telling a story to someone who wasn't there. So I did. I told him about the night at the bar. The slow move-in. The 2 a.m. help with loans. The consolidation forms I'd signed without reading closely. The Northway call. The forged signature. The USB with my own voice reading out security answers. He didn't interrupt. Just made notes. When I was done, he picked up the flash drive with 2 fingers, like it might explode. You said these are recordings of you giving him sensitive information? He asked. I nodded. I didn't know he was recording. I thought we were just talking. He plugged it into an old laptop, put on headphones, and listened to a couple of files. His jaw tightened. This is a lot, he said finally. Identity theft cases are usually faceless. Some guy in another state, some data breach. I don't often get a situation where the suspect is living with the victim and collecting information like this. Is it even a case if we were dating? I asked quietly. It feels stupid. I trusted him. I signed things. Maybe this is my fault. He shook his head hard. Trusting your partner is not consent to fraud, he said. You signed documents under false pretenses. That matters. And recording someone's personal data without their knowledge to use it is not a gray area. It's a crime. He slid the legal pad closer. I'm going to need you to write a formal statement, he said. Dates as close as you can remember. Everything you told me, but in your words. Don't worry about sounding legal. Just honest. My hand shook a little as I wrote. When we were done, he explained the next steps. We'll pull the IP logs from the lenders, he said. If the applications were submitted from your home network, that supports your story. We'll subpoena any accounts tied to your SSN, see where the money went. If funds landed in an account associated with him, that's evidence. And then? I asked. And then, he said, we talked to Jace. The idea made my stomach clench. Do I need to be there? I asked. Absolutely not, he said. In fact, I'd prefer you not be. Have you considered where you'll stay if this goes sideways? I had. The night before, I'd texted my coworker Danny, hypothetically, if I needed a couch for a bit because my relationship imploded, would you hate that? She'd replied in 30 seconds, hypothetically, I'd kick my boyfriend out of the living room for you. What's going on? So I told her. Not all the details, but enough. Come over whenever, she'd said. I'll hide snacks and wine. Now, in that gray police room, I nodded. I have a place, I said. I'll move some stuff tonight. Just in case. Detective Martinez gave me his card. If he threatens you, calls you names, tries to make you feel crazy, document everything, he said. Texts, emails, voicemails. Do not delete anything. And if you feel unsafe at any point, call 911. Don't wait. Walking out of the station, the air felt brighter and heavier at the same time. Brighter, because someone finally believed me and was putting structure around the chaos. Heavier, because now there was an official label on what Jace had done. Identity theft. Fraud. Crimes. Not a misunderstanding. Not relationship drama. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I went to Target. I bought 2 big duffel bags and a lock for a storage unit I'd rented on my lunch break. Then I went home and started packing while Jace was still at a meeting. I moved quickly. Clothes first. Important documents. My childhood photo albums. Sketchbooks. The mug my grandmother gave me before she died. All the small, irreplaceable things that made my apartment mine instead of just a place we shared. I left the furniture. The TV. The coffee table he claimed from his old place. Let him sit on his own lies. When I was done, I loaded the duffels into my car and drove them to the storage unit. The guy at the front desk didn't ask questions. He's probably seen enough midnight break UPS to fill a book. I texted Danny, moving in tonight. Drama level, 9 out of 10. I'll explain later. She replied with a couch emoji and a wine glass emoji. Translation: doors open. I went back to the apartment for one last sweep. When I walked in, Jace was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. He hung up quickly when he saw me. Hey, he said, forcing a smile. You're home late. Everything okay? I looked at him and saw, for the first time, not my boyfriend, but the man who'd sat in this same room and quietly turned me into a walking loan machine. Yeah, I said. Just a long day. He stepped closer, reaching for my waist. We should do something fun this weekend, he said. Get out of town. You need a break. I stepped back. I can't, I said. I've got some other stuff I need to deal with. His eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. What stuff? My credit report, I said. Banks I've never heard of. Loans I never took. That kind of stuff. The smile dropped from his face like someone cut a string. Harper, he said slowly, we've talked about this. Those scammers. It's not scammers, I said. It's you. The words hung in the air between us. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then he laughed. Not a real laugh. That tight, slightly too loud sound people make when they're trying to reset the tone. Wow, he said. Is this where we are now? I'm your villain? You think I'm sitting here in some hoodie making fake IDs? I think you've been using my information to open accounts in my name, I said. My voice was steady, surprising even me. I think you faked my signature. I think you've been recording me without my knowledge. And I think you expect me to be too in love and too scared to do anything about it. His jaw clenched. That's insane, he said. Do you hear yourself? You've been reading too many true crime threads. Then why did I find a flash drive full of recordings of my voice giving you my card numbers and social? I asked. For the first time since I knew him, he didn't have an immediate reply. A flicker of genuine fear crossed his face before he shoved it away. You went through my stuff, he said instead. That's a nice twist. You invade my privacy and then accuse me. There it was. The flip. Make me the bad guy. Turn the spotlight away. Jace, I said quietly. The police have the USB now. Silence. They have the loan documents, I added. They're pulling IP logs. They're subpoenaing accounts tied to my social. If I'm wrong, you'll have nothing to worry about, right? His face drained of color. You went to the police, he whispered, like the word itself was worse than anything he'd done. Yes. You're trying to ruin my life, he said, voice rising. Do you know what a fraud charge does to a person? To their career? You just tanked everything I've been building because you're insecure about some paperwork you don't even understand. I felt anger burn through the fear. You tanked your own life when you decided my name was a tool, I said. I didn't do that. His eyes flashed. You are just like them, he spat. All my exes. You act cool until something gets a little complicated, then you run to daddy authority and cry victim. I almost laughed. Funny, I said. All your exes ended up crazy right after they stopped letting you use them. He took a step toward me. Get out, he hissed. If you don't trust me, you don't get to live here. That's the thing, I said, reaching for my keys. I already moved out. His mouth snapped shut. What? My stuff, I said. It's gone. I came back to tell you what's happening to your face, not behind your back. Consider this your heads up. He stared at me, chest rising and falling fast. "You're making a huge mistake," he said. "You think the cops are your friends? They'll dig into your finances, too. They'll see you sign those forms. They'll say you were in on it. You're not as innocent as you think." For a heartbeat, fear clawed at my throat again. Then I remembered Detective Martinez's words, "Trusting your partner isn't consent to fraud." "I'd rather have them look at everything," I said, "than spend one more day pretending I don't know what you've done." I turned toward the door. "You walk out that door and it's over," he said behind me, voice shaking with rage. "Don't come crawling back when they screw you over." I paused with my hand on the knob. "I won't," I said. "And if anyone's crawling anywhere, it's going to be you, asking a public defender why identity theft carries jail time." Then I left. I drove straight to Danny's and didn't cry until I was sitting on her couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like her laundry detergent instead of his cologne. "Is it bad that I feel stupid?" I asked between breaths. "It's human," she said. "But you're not stupid. Stupid would be staying." 3 days later, Detective Martinez called. "We executed a search warrant at your old apartment," he said. "We need you to come down and confirm some things." My heart hammered. "Is he?" "He was there," Martinez said. "He didn't handle it gracefully." When I arrived, he showed me a table full of evidence bags. I recognized Jace's laptop, his external hard drive, his notebooks. There were also printed copies of my driver's license, my social card, and a folder labeled with my name. I pointed, throat tight. "That's mine," I said. They'd already started going through everything. "Here," Martinez said, sliding a printed email chain toward me. "Is this your email address?" It was. Attached to it were copies of loan applications sent from a device with Jace's username, at times I knew I'd been at work. There was a bank transfer log showing money moving from accounts in my name to an account with Jace's name and a business DBA I'd never heard of. "Funds were withdrawn in cash within 24 hours, Martinez said. "ATM footage matches him." I stared at the paper as a weird calm settled over me. This wasn't in my head. It wasn't just some messy breakup argument. It was documented. Timed. Recorded. Real. "We're arresting him," Martinez said. "Fraud, identity theft, unauthorized use of personal information. There may be more once the banks finish their audits." He watched my face carefully. "You won't have to see him today," he added. "Unless you want to." I didn't. When they took him in, he apparently told them I'd been in on it, that I'd benefited from the loans, that we were partners, and I turned on him. The detective asked if I wanted to hear the recording of his interview. I declined. I didn't need to hear a man who'd already twisted every part of my life try to twist the truth one more time. What I did need was to know how this would end. "Will he go to jail?" I asked. Martinez's expression was careful. "That depends," he said. "On the DA, the judge, the plea deals. But with the amount of evidence, he's not walking away clean. And even if he doesn't do a long sentence, this kind of conviction follows you. Banks, employers, landlords, they don't forget." For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt something close to relief. Not happiness. Not satisfaction. Just the feeling that gravity, which had been sliding sideways for months, was finally pointing down again. Movies make karma look like lightning. In real life, it looks like letters. Lots of letters. The months after Jace's arrest were a blur of forms and phone calls. I filed official fraud claims with every bank that had an account in my name. I sent them copies of the police report, our email evidence, the recordings of my voice on that USB. I sat on hold more times than I can count, explaining to strangers that no, I didn't remodel a kitchen, I didn't buy a motorcycle, I didn't wire $10,000 to some shell company. Some institutions moved fast. They closed the fraudulent accounts, removed them from my credit report, and marked my file with big bold notes. Victim of identity theft. Do not hold responsible. Others dragged their feet. You sign this form, one rep pointed out over the phone. I signed a different form, I said. A refinance my boyfriend told me was above board. He swapped pages. Your fraud team has the originals. The police have the originals. I have the police report number if you want it again. Each conversation was a small battle. Danny joked that I'd become a professional victim advocate for myself. I didn't feel professional. I felt tired and angry and incredibly old. But every time a lender sent me a letter saying, "We have confirmed you were not the responsible party and have removed this account from your file," it felt like getting a piece of myself back. My credit score, which had taken a nosedive, slowly started to crawl upward. I met with a legal aid attorney who specialized in this kind of mess. "You're not the first," she said, sliding a cup of tea toward me. "Intimate partner fraud is way more common than people think. It's just embarrassing, so victims rarely talk about it." "Intimate partner fraud," I repeated. "That's a thing." "Unfortunately," she said. "When you trust someone enough to share a home, bills, your social security number, you're handing them the keys to your financial life. Most partners use that access for good or at least neutral purposes. Some don't. And because you're linked emotionally, it hits harder." Hearing her say "victim" out loud made me flinch. I didn't like that word. But she wasn't using it to make me small. She was using it to place responsibility where it belonged. On him. The criminal trial didn't happen quickly. Jace's lawyer tried every trick. He claimed the recordings were taken out of context. He said the money that went into his accounts was repayment for personal loans. He tried to argue that I'd benefited from some of the funds because one of the fraudulent accounts had a line about home improvements and we lived together. The DA responded with timestamps, IP logs, ATM videos, and a neat timeline of every transaction showing the pattern. Jace had used my information, without my knowledge, to pull in tens of thousands in credit, then funneled the cash into his own ventures and expenses. I didn't have to testify in front of him. The judge allowed me to give my statement via video because of the nature of the case. Sitting in a small office, camera pointed at me, I told the story one more time. How I'd trusted him. How he'd slowly maneuvered himself into my financial life. How he'd recorded me. How I'd felt when the banks called, when I saw debts in my name I'd never agreed to. "I always thought I was careful," I said, voice shaking a little. "I shred mail. I don't click weird links. I use strong passwords. But I didn't think I needed to protect myself from someone sleeping next to me." My lawyer nodded encouragingly from off camera. The judge listened. Months later, the verdict came. Guilty. Fraud. Identity theft. Unauthorized use of personal information. He took a plea deal to avoid a full trial, but the sentence still included time in county jail, probation, mandatory restitution payments to the banks, and a permanent mark on his record. He tried to look me up on social media afterward. I know because I got a notification that someone searched for your profile using your email. He didn't find anything. I'd blocked him everywhere long before that. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. Mostly, I felt done. Like I'd been holding my breath for a year and finally exhaled. My life didn't magically become perfect. I still had to deal with the emotional hangover of loving someone who saw me as a resource, not a person. I went to therapy. I unpacked the part of me that heard crazy exes and thought, I'll be different. I'll be the one who understands him. My therapist said something that stuck. "Abusers and scammers don't need you to be stupid," she said. "They just need you to be kind. To doubt yourself more than you doubt them." I stopped saying I was stupid after that. I started saying I was kind to the wrong person. That's a big difference. I moved into a new apartment a year later. This one had bright white walls, a noisy street outside, and a landlord who knew my whole story because I told her up front. "Your application shows a fraud alert," she said, scanning my file. "Yeah," I replied. Long story short, my ex stole my identity. There's a police report and a court verdict to prove it. She looked up sharply, then nodded. "Thanks for telling me," she said. "We'll note it. I'm glad you got out." On my first night there, I sat on the floor among half-unpacked boxes, eating takeout straight from the container, and realized something. The silence felt different. It wasn't the tense, waiting silence of my old place, always listening for his key in the lock, wondering what bill or crisis or lie would walk in with him. It was just quiet, peaceful. Mine. I keep my important documents in a small fireproof safe now. I freeze my credit when I'm not actively using it. I talk to my friends about money in a way we never did before, about how we structure our accounts, who we trust, how we double-check things. When I date, I listen carefully when a man talks about his exes. If he says, "We weren't compatible," or "We wanted different things," or "I messed up," that's one thing. If he says, "They were all crazy," I hear, "They all eventually saw who I really was." And then I run. Because here's the truth I wish I'd understood sooner. The biggest red flag isn't a late bill or a messy past. It's a person who treats other people's trust as a tool. Jace thought he was smarter than everyone. He thought he could outtalk banks, outcharm cops, and outrun consequences. He ended up with a criminal record, a ruined reputation in the very industry he bragged about, and a stack of debts he can't escape. I ended up with scars, yes. But I also ended up with my name back, my credit, my peace, and the unshakable knowledge that if anyone ever tries to turn me into paperwork again, I will burn the whole scheme down before they even finish signing my name. Watch the next story.